Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Is anybody there? I guess it's still 9:59.
Oh, let's just start.
Okay. There's Laura.
Hey. How about some introductions? My name's Wade MacDonald. I'm assistant professor of ceramics here at UA and in Tuscaloosa. And I'm from Michigan originally. Came down here in 2015 as an adjunct at UA. And much more, but there's a quick intro.
Yeah. Hi, I recognize some names joining. It's nice to see you guys, your little bubbles down there. I'm Herbert, and this is my husband.
Yeah, we're married.
And I am a painter, and I live in Birmingham with this guy and my daughter Clara, and I teach at the Alabama School of Fine Arts, and we're sitting in a gallery actually on the campus of UA at Tuscaloosa where Wade teaches and where I got my MFA. And so it's kind of interesting to be back.
Homecoming.
And I got my BFA from Montevallo. But between my BFA, after my BFA, and before my MFA, I actually worked at the Montgomery Museum of Fine Arts for a few years. It was a lovely time. So I know you guys. So it's lovely to be chatting with y'all this morning. What else
Shall
do we want to
say some more? I guess I didn't go into. So I'm originally from Kalamazoo, Michigan, and I went to Western Michigan University, and I got my bachelor's in art education, and I took I did some traveling, and I took about 10 years off, and then I went back and got my MFA from Michigan State University in 2014. I took about a year off between graduating and coming down here, and I did some residencies. I was at Banff Center in Banff, Alberta. And I also did a extended residency at Anderson Ranch Art Center out in Snowmass Village, Colorado. And came down here, like I said, in 2015. We met in the spring of 2016,
It's great. Wade remembers all dates. I'm like, it was a go, once it happened in the past, and Wade's always like, nope, it was 2013, it was July. Like, he was very good at remembering specific dates.
It's
great.
It's good.
It's great for me.
Yeah.
Good balance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What about early artistic influences? When did you know you wanted to be an artist, or what did you do when you were a kid for an artistic outlet?
So I guess I always, my mom was always bringing home those kind of a craft in a box, to do this, so and I also was an only child for the first 10 years of my life, and we lived in log cabins outside of Knoxville, in these primitive log cabins in the woods, and then we moved to a antebellum house in Tuskegee, and so both of those locations were really interesting, but also really isolated, so I spent a lot of time just outside by myself or in my room by myself, kind of just entertaining. And so I would draw, and, I had some friends who were kind of interested in art, and that sort of brought it into my view as something available to me to do, to spend my time. So that's kind of what I, kind of got me going on it. And I mean, it took me a while to decide that I was an artist. I wanted to be an artist. I was even though I made a bunch of work all through high school, like kind of really, I didn't make it necessarily in my art class, although I loved my high school art teachers, but I would make a ton on my own, but I still wasn't considering myself like an artist. But I also had no idea what else I might be or do with my time and life. And so I took a couple of years off actually after high school. And I was just like kind of bumming around. I worked. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was sort of like adrift.
What did you do in the interim?
Oh, I waited tables.
Yeah.
Like it was, it was enough to know that that wasn't the way for me. But then my mom was like, just apply to Montevallo. Just go to Montevallo, see what it's like. And it's like within, the first day of class, I was like, oh my God, my people. Like this is where I belong. I'm an artist, and these are, these people think like me, and and it was great. What about you?
Well, I grew up with former opera singers.
Yes.
And there was always a lot of opera in being played, and political radio constantly. And I would say we were not my parents are not necessarily. Hey, Mom. I'm talking about you. Not really visual people. They're musicians, and so I took some musical theater mime. I remember taking a mime class.
What?
When I was really young, like
I'm going to need a demonstration later,
no.
maybe.
Miming, and so I was kind of geared towards theater and performing arts. And when was that? 1986. I started to play string bass, and that was when I moved to Michigan. And I got really into playing string bass in our elementary orchestra, and I'm getting a lot of hearts for that. And I did that. I played in youth symphonies. I kind of felt that I was going to probably go into music in some capacity. And I'll have to be honest, I became a little bit bored with playing string bass and kind of always being the backup to the melody. And so I switched gears. I played guitar. This was in early 90s when, the grunge scene was happening and everybody was in bands. And so that became the motivation to do music, was to just be in bands. And I quit string bass my senior year of high school. I was in a very kind of influential, I guess, art class in high school. We had a great art teacher in high school named Carrie Vanderveen, and he would just work on his own work, and it was incredible to see someone draw photorealistically, like in front of you, and it motivated me to want to be an art teacher. So I graduated, I got my high school diploma. I went directly into art education at Western Michigan University, and kind of oscillated back and forth between ceramics and art education, and graduated with a BA in art education. And but I always had a sketch pad. I always had like colored pencils and pastels and stuff at home, and I would draw. I also like to spend a lot of time alone, and I have two younger brothers, but they're quite a bit younger than me, and so
a few years. It's not a ton.
But when you're like 10 and they're 4,
yeah.
You kind of seek out some alone time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes, and your mom has started to take ceramics class, before pandemic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was kind of my early art days.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't mention this, but between undergrad and grad, I worked at the public library of Cincinnati in Hamilton County, in Cincinnati, Ohio, right downtown. And I was there for about 3.5 years, and that was very kind of influential for me, being able to just have access to the library's collection of art books, architecture and design books, and then when I moved back to Michigan, I worked at a museum, Kalamazoo Institute of Arts, and I was they have a art school there called the Kirk Newman Art School, and so I was I was a ceramics instructor and lab technician there, and for 4 years, and that allowed me to make work for graduate school applications, and it was a great experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe,
Now what?
why don't you want to show them some of our work?
Sure. Should we do a walkthrough and then one of us takes over, or what do you want to do?
I don't know. So kind of what we've got going. So we had to kind of come up with a way when we were asked to do it. We were asked to do it together, and we don't share a studio, of course. And Wade's is, here at the university, and mine is in the basement of our house. We had to kind of decide, are we going to be in separate locations and just kind of sharing our screen, or could we set up in a third location? And that's what we decided to do. So what we've both done is brought some work and kind of installed it quickly in this space. So let me see, we'll walk you around. I got to figure out how to switch the screen. Is it this one?
I think so. There you go.
There. So I'll just kind of let you see what we got going here. You'll probably pretty clearly be able to tell whose is whose. And then I guess what we were going to do is sort of take turns talking a little bit about our work, and then we'll kind of come back together and take questions. We're open to other. Wade is going to, we'll go through and you guys can see these a little bit longer. So,
Do you want me to hold it, or do you
I could do it like this.
Okay.
I mean, what do you think?
That's fine.
One of the things I noticed, yes, Laura, good question. We have exhibited before together. It's been a while. And this is the first time, maybe since when, Wade, that we've put our work
We did
literally together in a...
in 2017.
So 2017 was the last time. And the thing that I really felt when we put this, just kind of installed this work, was that our work is kind of coming closer together. It's always been very distinct, and we have distinct preferences for, how we want things to look and be, but this work maybe is the most cohesive, least distance between the two that I've seen it be. Sometimes our first show together, it was exciting because the work was dramatically different. Mine was very loose, very messy, and kind of all over the place. And Wade's is the opposite in every way. It's really crisp, really clean. And that's kind of fun. That's sort of something we'll talk about maybe is later, is just that how we, how the others aesthetic and the other's ideas kind of might shape how we think about our own work just by virtue of, asking them about it. So one thing that, the other thing I'll say is that all of the work that is in this space for me has been work, except for one piece, which I'll show you, is work that I've made during the pandemic. So that's a good kind of, did that turn sideways for you guys? If I do that?
Does that work?
A few close-ups as you go. Yeah, I think that's sideways. I mean, it looks sideways to me. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, all work that I've done in the pandemic, and that's, if there can be any positives that have come out of it, time in the studio for me has been one, even though sometimes it's kind of, it does not turn sideways for them. Yeah. There, okay, that's good to know. So that was a little fun trip we took together. So these pieces, most of the pieces in the show are all about the same size. I kind of decided recently to regulate my sizes so that I'm kind of working, working with within the parameter of the same size, and it's always kind of awkward to figure out where to begin when talking about your work. But I guess I'll start by talking about kind of how I begin a piece. I don't do sketches or anything like that. I spend time in my studio, sitting and looking a lot. It's downstairs in my basement, so I get to just kind of walk downstairs and sit and look around at my mess. I think that that's one thing that's nice for looking at work, is that we have it in this really nice clean space, but this nice clean space is like the opposite of where I work. My workspace is covered in paint drips and like a really suspicious amount of spiders, and it's a really live space. It's really active space. And so, that's actually very helpful for me, to be in a space that has a lot going on. And I use what I see there and find there to inform the work. So I also, because it's a garage and we live in Alabama, so it's like pretty warm and temperate most of the year, I open that garage door and I can, work in the studio for a little while. I don't know if you guys can really see this one. This is like kind of a long string painting. I can go outside, I can weed the garden, and then I can come back in and work on a painting again. So all of that stuff that I see on the floor, the paint drips, old paintings that haven't worked. Yes, I can tell you about the larger work. Old paintings that haven't worked out, that are scraps on the floor, things I see out of my, in the garden, all that stuff kind of informs what goes into the paintings. Not in a real direct way, but in kind of a loose way. These two little pieces right here, I even, not only was I kind of paying attention to the painted marks that I saw and the spatial kind of behaviors around me, but I was literally finding detritus on the ground. So that's kind of paint scraps. Here's a painted rock that I found on my studio floor. So I kind of was in sweeping up, kind of gathering things and adding those into the paintings as well. So, and then this one, bits of rope. I kind of, in recent work, I've been expanding beyond just painting, marks that reference physical forms like a line or a shape, and including three-dimensional things. The quality of those things, I think, like their characteristic, their is very similar to my painted or drawn marks. And so, so I've started to bring those in. And then also, sorry, don't be dizzy. Here's a bigger one, and I'll then go to the front and show you the other bigger one. Yeah, rope. I love rope. So here's a bigger one that I did. And in this one, and in the other one that I showed you guys a minute ago, I've been thinking about how to display the paintings so that they come off the wall. And they're not like dependent on the wall. I think there's something about hanging a painting on the wall sometimes that's very formal, and I'm interested in kind of referring back to the studio again, to kind of the improvisation of the way that it was made, but also I kind of like that this that when the work comes off the wall and they lean on these stands, that they kind of engage with the space and the floor like the way that our bodies do. So it's standing, I'm standing, we're kind of encountering each other in a way that just makes it, I don't know, I guess I don't like, sometimes I am more attracted to something that's a little more casual, looser, kind of, so here's another one. This is the oldest work in the show. I can't remember what year it was made. Maybe Wade knows.
Wasn't due in the pandemic, was it?
This was the only one that wasn't during the pandemic. But this was one of the beginning ones where I began to think about the stand. And I would say that Wade, my kind of familiarity and spending time with Wade's work, influenced me wanting to expand, or like even, giving me the idea of expanding onto these stands. So and then I'll go to the front and show you that other big one, and then I'll give it to Wade. So here's that one too. Again, these three-dimensional ones, whether the painting is a regular rectilinear painting or more of a long line like this, or it includes literal stuff or painted stuff. All those things kind of have this quality, like a wobbliness, a handmade quality to them that I like. I build the stands. Tara, thanks for asking. And then here's one of the last paintings I'll show you guys. And I guess I can kind of come back to that idea of borrowing from my experiences and what I see. This one, my paintings are all abstract paintings, but they do kind of reference sometimes, more or less directly. This one reminds me, after I made it, I thought about how it looked, or it seemed to reference these big ginger lilies that are growing all around our house that I planted. So they get really big and they kind of come up and like into the window view. So when you're in the kitchen or outside Clara's window, there are these great big orange kind of flowers kind of poking up eye level everywhere. So I didn't intentionally do that, but does this have a title? I don't remember. I don't remember. I don't think it does. Sometimes a title comes pretty easily, and then other times I have to kind of work a little harder for it. And then I guess the last thing I'll say before I hand it off to Wade is that, it sort of happened for me in graduate school that I began to think about kind of trusting that me and my experiences were going to come into my work in a way that was without me forcing it or like intentionally kind of planning for it. I wouldn't say I'm going to go and make a piece about ginger lilies or gardening, but I would know that that stuff would just happen on its own. And so I've always worked. Here's another kind of long painting. I've always kind of worked that way, where I just trusted things would come into the work that were me, and my experiences, and I see it in my surroundings, and I see it in, my relationships, and just, personal kind of experiences and more direct stuff. All right, guys, I'm going to hand it over to Wade so he can do a little bit of talking about his work.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to start over here. So this is the first piece in this arrangement. These pieces were made in the fall of 2019, and they were actually made for an exhibition at Clemson University that was kind of meant to showcase artists who are working in the South who are using some digital fabrication methods in conjunction with their clay work. And so I decided to create these 6 pieces for that show. 4 of them were shown, and then 2 went to another show. So this is actually one of the first times they've all been in the same space together, and it's especially rewarding to finally see how these pieces can interact with each other. Just some process ideas. So the concept for these pieces came from actually thinking about Frank Lloyd Wright houses and the way that he planned the way kind of the plot for a house for a Frank Lloyd Wright home. And in Kalamazoo, Michigan, there are several Frank Lloyd Wright houses, and the plot is actually not square or rectangular. And I think they may actually be circular. And so it made me begin to think about how I could potentially make architectural models that engaged in a non-rectangular or square footprint. And so all of these are based on theoretical architecture. And when I was a student at Michigan State, there was an exhibition of Labius woods, and there were several architectural models and drawings, and it pushed me to think about architecture in a way that could be completely unbuildable or abstracted. And so these are go closer. These are, in that idea of inspired by architecture, potential built environments, but unbuildable, really. When I came down here to Alabama, I was one of the first things that came to mind was the work of Rural Studio, and I think that their mission has really kind of inspired me. They have a house, a housing a low cost home that it's kind of like a kit home, but not really, but it's really well designed. It's like a $40,000 or $20,000 home, but everything in that house, the layout to materials, is everything's considered in those spaces. And so you can actually, at a very low cost, you can, lower income individuals can enjoy like a space that's completely designed, And I think that for me is one of the basic ideas or concepts behind these pieces. So the title of this series is Utterly Forgettable Homes. And the idea there is that for most of us, we live in houses that are built a certain way. They're built to be economical, right? They're built to function first and foremost, and there's very little actual design considerations beyond just the bare functionality of the structure. And so being someone who is creative, who thinks about architecture and design every day, I think about our house a lot and what it can be and the potential of that space and how the spaces around us really kind of inform the way we think about the world and our mental health as a society. And I think, and this is kind of a noble thought, but I honestly believe that if we lived in homes that were all very well considered and designed, that it would change the way that we interact with each other and with the world around us. I did build all of the pedestals. I started by building the pedestals, and I really had no idea of what would go on top of the pedestals. That came later, but I was also at the same time working with Rhino, which is a 3D modeling program, and we got a plastic 3D printer here at UA, and so I was starting to make these plastic prototypes that I wanted to turn into ceramic pieces. So I'll just kind of go in here. So this piece here is actually like a cup form that I turned upside down to create sculpture, but this is essentially like a 3D printed object that I made I think it was like a 5-part mold or something for. So this is slip cast porcelain, and this is, a hand built piece, but all of these white pieces are actually slip cast porcelain with just a white glaze on it. These pieces down here are pieces of a landscape sculpture that I made back in grad school, and I still had the molds for them, but I was able to go online and actually download a digital landscape that had been modeled for a gaming environment, and I was able to CNC router that landscape out of foam, and then I made a series of molds of that landscape, and I can press clay into those plaster molds, and so I get like these landscape forms. And this is a glaze, ceramic glaze here, textured glaze. I started to incorporate this terrazzo pattern in a lot of my recent work. And that pattern is kind of in direct reference to a architect and designer from the 80s, 90s, Shiro Kuramada. And he's known for this very elaborate kind of terrazzo pattern furniture and room environments. So that's where that kind of came from. But I think the pieces are in some way kind of in reference to a lot of the design that was kind of coming out of the Memphis group back in the 80s. So there's a hybridity that's happening between kind of this low polygon type of digital shape with something that's based in 80s design and art. Plexiglass, yes, this is all plexi that I actually just had a lot of this light green plexi in my studio, and plexiglass is much easier to work with than glass, and you can just cut it on a bandsaw or a table saw, and you can sand it, I kind of like the way that the materials are all kind of interacting with each other, and the color and plexiglass. In ceramics, you have to consider how light interacts with the objects that you're making, and so I think to kind of enhance the contrast or the tension within the pieces, you think about like how flat color interacts with color that's reflective. And plexiglass is the most reflective, and so to have a flat piece of ceramic on plexiglass, they both activate each other visually. Well, what else do you all need to know about these pieces? Any questions? No? Well. Water references?
Like, are you making them?
Am I making water references? I would say like not overtly, no.
But definitely landscape.
Landscape, yes, absolutely landscape, yeah.
Have you talked about the pictures that you?
No, so in a lot of these pieces, I have taken actual photographs of architecture, and I've worked them into the kind of the footprint of the overall composition here. So I started to, and I mean, this would be like a collage technique, do more up close shots. So I would say like the paper, this is actually like a terrazzo vinyl, adhesive vinyl that's on this piece. It's pretty incredible what's out there as far as different types of patterns that you can purchase. This is actually I don't know where I got this this here, but this is just a pine tree photograph that I cut up. Elliot's laughing at me.
So is there like a figurative, like, or figural reference to your work, like body, like kind of proximity, or I don't know. I think they feel architectural, but sometimes they feel very like, especially the landscape ones, they feel almost like bodily to me.
Oh.
And then also kind of the placement, it seems like interaction and
Right.
proximity. So I don't know if you think about, or is it just kind of maybe not even bringing it, forward into intentional thinking, but.
Well, I think of it as, how you, as an artist, can create intimacy within inanimate objects, and so I think getting something like a piece like this, where there's a contact point, and the feeling of like that versus like that,
Tension.
It's creating like a tension between the pieces that I think is maybe it's not tension, but it's an intimacy between the pieces.
Because I do think that there's these moments that feel very human, like very, like you kind of like sort of kind of walking the line or something between architecture and, sort of like crisp, clean, and then there's these moments that feel very intimate and human and bodily, and so I don't know.
Well, that's part of the goal of the work, is to give a more human aspect, or to attach a more human aspect to contemporary architecture. And it's hard to get that, I think, when you first enter a museum or something that's like, it's clad in metal. There are no like right angles anywhere. But that kind of design idea, or that architectural idea, is a direct kind of response to, I think, where we are in our society, or global society. So I think my goal is to kind of, in a more direct way, attach a more kind of human characteristic to contemporary architecture through the placement, through the scale of these pieces, and thinking of them as like models, architectural models. So these pieces, so there's a question about how long it takes to make these, or let's see, take an average amount of studio time to create, or do you find some that take longer than others? Well, these took about three or 4 months to complete. I just worked on them every day over the summer, and when you work in a series, you can kind of bounce around a lot. So I constantly like am moving and doing something to one of these while another one is waiting for something to happen to it. So, I would say that there are some pieces that for me take upwards of 2 years or 3 years to complete. And usually it's just like I'm waiting for something to emerge conceptually, or I discover a material that the piece needs. So I have pieces that are in progress, but then I have pieces that, there's a defined date that they have to be completed by that time. And so I just push to have them done by a certain date. So, when the date comes, the pieces are finished. So, yeah. Shall we
Is there anything else you guys want to see or ask while we're out here with the work? We're probably about 10 more minutes of chatting.
Yes, lots easier to build small. Yeah.
Thanks to you guys.
Thank you.
That was very fun. It was really fun for us to put our work together and talk about it. Hope some of what I said made sense.
Oh, you were great. You were great. It's hard to walk around and talk at the same time.
Yes, you can buy any and all, Laura. She wanted to know if any are for purchase. Yeah, we love to
just reach
see
out.
our work go to good homes.
Instagram message me.
Yeah, we're both on Instagram and have websites and
should be on the museum website. Okay.
Well, it's a little early. Are we?
You want to?
I don't know.
Well, we can just sit down and answer questions.
Yeah, I mean, not trying to cut it off if we need to stay on here for a few more minutes, but happy to answer any other questions. Or what do you think, Laura? Oh, I can't turn it. Sure. So, Ann Herbert Paintings is my website, and Ann at Ann R. Herbert. So it looks like Anner Herbert is my Instagram. And Wade, what's yours?
Mine is wfmceramics.com, and my Instagram is at wmac. Let's see, what is it? wmacd.art.
Yeah, I'm gonna lean us up here so I don't have to. And when come visit us, come visit our studios when this is all over. Okay, we're gonna chat for 4 more minutes and then we can sign off.
All right.
But yeah, you can come see my incredibly messy, crazy studio in the basement.
Yeah, come on and visit me at UA anytime. Just send me an email or message me, and I'll give you a tour of the studio and chat with you.
What's one more thing we could talk about while we have a few more minutes?
Well, maybe we could talk about things that we're working on right now, or future things that are coming up.
Yes, good. See, Laura was right on that too. Yes, we want to come to Montgomery and visit. I have one piece in a show coming up at Presbyterian College, which is kind of a different thing because it's a digital piece, which I've never done that before now. And so that's kind of interesting. And I do have ideas for some pieces that I want to make. And one is it's sort of an extension of the stands in that, but I just have to kind of figure out how to do it. I have this idea to do like a floor, like a false floor, so that it would kind of go like you'd install paintings, but then there would be a floor that you can walk on, and that floor is very squeaky. It's like kind of like it is referencing this when a few summers ago I got to take a group of students to Japan, and we visited this castle, and a Japanese castle is not like kind of the castle that you're calling to mind. It's it's much more modest, but basically their security system was something called a nightingale floor. So all around like the exterior of the castle, the home, the dwelling, is a walkway that kind of goes all the way around, and all the rooms are on the inside. And they built the walkway so that it's really noisy when you walk on it. Every step is squeak, 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 squeak. And it made me think of the way that we come to know our house or any house. You know where the squeaky boards are, and like that ideas of kind of being kind of aware of the body, and kind of like, a heightened awareness of like your body in a space. And that's really related to the way I think about painting. So I thought it would be my idea is to build that and then install a show. And so that when you walk through the show, like you kind of you can't be undetected. Like you're kind of like constantly reminded of your body and things like that. So that's my idea for something.
Like that.
We'll see if I make it. And then I've got a residency coming up this summer at Stoveworks in Chattanooga, which is a cool new residency spot. And but that's all I got cooking. Wade, what about you?
I guess for me, the next thing that's happening is I proposed a show called Clay Plus that's taking place at the Clay Center of New Orleans, and I'm not in it, I'm jurying it, and I'm excited for that because I don't get to do many curatorial projects. So I proposed that, I guess it was last summer sometime. So that's happening. The jurying process begins, I think, mid-February, and then the show is at the end of the summer. So that's happening. And then I have a solo exhibition at Auburn University at the end of April.
I'm very excited about that. That's where my family lives, and so
I have a free place to stay.
Yeah. But it's going to be great. I'm excited about that one.
Yep. Other than that, there's a lot of stuff just that's out there that had things that have been submitted and that kind of stuff. So, it's kind of like a constant thing that's going all the time.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
I've really enjoyed this, and it was
awesome.
super fun. We're gonna eat lunch. We're gonna go to a friend's house and have a distanced outdoor lunch after this, and
go home and
clean.
Work on that
Probably.
house. That'd be great. You should come down.
So what month is that show in Auburn?
Installation, let's see, it's opens at the end of April, so I think it's like April 24th. I'd have to look at a calendar, but end of April it opens. Mask up.
We will.
Okay. I think we're
all right. Are we good? Okay. Thanks, folks.
Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye. How do we
end this?
I don't know. Good to see your bubble, Elliot.